to come. So we're missing Travis and Brian.
And Benny.
And
OJ.
Well, OJ, okay, Travis, Brian, and OJ.
And Benny.
Travis.
Brian, OJ, Benny, and
Well, they're all here for that.
Travis, Brian, OJ, and Benny. Travis, Brian, yeah, 4. Thought I had them all written down. I'll say OJ instead of Oliver. I need to.
Just to recognize you.
Y'all might have to help me through this tonight. Who am I going to call on to pray? Who's going to say a prayer? You want to pray?
I need to pay more mind to it, though. Yeah, I don't appreciate it. Let me know next time. If we see if I'm...
I'm not aware of any either.
Y'all got any special intentions for the prayer?
The water.
Just that it'll quit raining.
How about that?
Turn it off. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee on Monday, January the 14th.
I'll mention him.
I'd like to ask that everyone stand for the invocation and the pledge, led by Councilman Kluot.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we ask you that you carry us through this storm some more. We've got a little bit more coming. We ask that everybody, once more, please look out to your neighbors and see what help they need. Let's look out for the elderly. Let's look out for those that do not have what we have. We ask that you keep everybody patient. And let's work through tonight's business with a good heart and sound judgment. Lord, we ask for special intentions for the Cannon family for the passing of Mr. Leo Cannon. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Secretary needs to record that we have members that are not present, Councilman Turner, Councilman Melanson, Councilman Joseph, and Councilman Johnson are not yet here. The Chair would like the Council to agree to add a President's report on our flooding situation at the appropriate time. Do I have any? I have a motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none. We don't need one.
Just a chair.
Hearing none, that passes. And I would like to remind the public that there is the opportunity for you to speak on any item on the agenda where it's appropriate. If you will sign in with the Council Secretary, please. You'll have 3 minutes at the appropriate time. Right. To the Chair's addition of a report from the Parish President, the Chair recognizes Tommy Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And basically, we still have 24 roads that are closed. The Amite River has crested at Port Benson. It's now falling. At Bar Manchac, it's still at 12.9. It's holding steady, but it hadn't dropped in the last few hours, and we're monitoring it. We got anywhere from 7 to 12 inches of rain around the parish, depending on the location, and we still have 2 pumps running, and we're pretty much in control of that basin. The only place we're having some minor flooding and things are up in the northern sector around the Bar Manchac area and Amite River. So we think everything's under control. We're looking for the possibility of about 2 more inches of rain. We should be able to handle that. Everything should, we shouldn't have any localized any homes that flood unless it's some isolated incident where something gets clogged up or something backs up. But so far we've weathered the storm, and I just want to thank all of our crews, Public Works and Drainage, for a job well done. They monitored the situation all weekend. We have still have 9 locations that have sand available, including all the fire departments and Lake Martin in the curve, and we don't have any bagged sand right now, but we do have sand and bags available, and if we need some help during the night, if something happens, I'm sure we can help some people out. But other than that, I think the worst is come and gone, and we can be thankful that we weren't hurt as bad as we could have been in the event that the rain would have continued and we'd have got 4 or 5 more inches. Then it could have been catastrophic for us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Any questions, gentlemen? I want to publicly acknowledge to the members of this body that the other night when I said I didn't think we needed a bagging machine, I was dead wrong. And I want you to know I think we need it bad. Let's get it done. Thank you so much. Tonight, as a request from the chair, the issue of juvenile detention in Ascension Parish will be brought to the forefront of your minds. I hope, gentlemen, this effort is to educate you about that issue, to offer you the opportunity to ask questions. And I want to thank the members of our law enforcement community, our judiciary, and members of the parish president's office who will be helping us to understand the state of juvenile detention for the citizens of Ascension Parish at this point. We'll begin by asking the parish president's representative to the commission that was initially formed when this issue became somewhat of a crisis, Ms. Kim Bro, who will come forward and give us an idea of what's going on from the commission's perspective.
Thank you, Terry. All righty. As you know, the legislature has created a multi-parish commission for St. James, excuse me, which represents 8 parishes on this board: Ascension, Assumption, St. James, St. John, St. Charles, Iberville, and West Baton Rouge parishes. The board meets the second Friday of every month, with our first meeting being held in September of 2012. Since the board has met, we've had severe trouble having a quorum. The last meeting that we had, we were able to obtain a quorum and pass a resolution in favor of Sheriff Wagasback's plan to obtain licensing from DCFS for a facility at his place in Assumption Parish. I spoke with President Roussel earlier today. St. James receives 1 meal for a youth facility, and the cost to operate St. James approximately is $2.5 to $2.8 million a year. St. James recently went up in their increase from $130 a day to $230 a day per juvenile. St. James also accepts juveniles from 32 parishes. Let me see what else. In 2012, Ascension Parish spent $459,960 for our juveniles. 2013, our budget is $470,000. What else? And that's just kind of like a brief summary, Terry. Anything else
Sure.
you have? Also, St. James will close their doors June 30th, 2013.
Gentlemen, any questions with regard to the commission?
I do, Madam Chair.
Councilman Laura?
Kim, what percentage of residents or participants, I guess, in the center are Ascension Parish?
Ascension Parish is the largest contributor,
do
roughly
you know
as
about-
much as 40 to 60%.
40, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. President?
And when the St. James Detention Center was created, it also gave each parish the opportunity to levy a 1 meal property tax without a vote of the people. And Ascension Parish is the only parish out of the 8 parishes that never did levy that 1 meal property tax. A one meal property tax currently brings around $900,000 a year. So we've been paying, I think, this year would be $470,000 or something like she said. But that's one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. You know, how long are we going to continue doing that and not levy that 1 meal? So I think you got a lot of officials here tonight that want to speak on this issue. It's something that we can't ignore. with more people come more problems. And basically, the juvenile problem is rising here in Ascension Parish, and you got one or two choices. I mean, you can have a place to incarcerate them, and hopefully, they can come back after, and hopefully they learn their lesson after the first time and become model citizens. But we all know that that doesn't happen always. So again, I just wanted to explain that also to you about the 1 cent that hadn't been levied over all these years. So
1 mil.
1 bill, I mean.
Correct. Right. Councilman Lambert.
Yeah, Parish President, with the closing of St. James Center, where's our options going? What are we looking at?
I'm going to yield that to Mr. Parrington. I think he's done some research on that.
Well, it's going to be wherever the court can determine to find somebody to send them. I mean, we don't have any operations right now that I'm aware of, but the court will have to find someone to send someplace. Until we have some situation where we've agreed to something with another parish, I really don't know where they plan on sending them right now. There are some places that have locations, but they're in various places around the state, and you'd have to enter into an agreement with that facility when you do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would like to ask that Judge Lambert to come forward and give us her assessment of the situation and what she thinks we're facing and how we could resolve it.
Good evening. How are y'all doing?
Good.
I don't really have anything necessarily prepared. I told Terry that I was going to just speak to you from my heart. The possibility of not having a juvenile detention center is just, it horrifies me. It really does. We've struggled with this for years on having available beds at St. James. Now, the bed availability actually has not been a problem lately. For years, though, it was, I had a juvenile that needed to be placed. Sorry, Judge, we don't have a bed. It was a real problem. Now, they seem to have beds more available, but, of course, they're about to close, too. I don't know if the general public, I don't know if the council has a true picture of the juvenile delinquency problem that we have. It's welcome to the 21st century. Ascension Parish has entered it, and we have serious juvenile felons that need to be placed in detention at any given time. And I certainly, as a judge, if I'm placed in a position where I have, and usually it's multiple, and we've had a rash of burglaries lately. These kids need to be put in detention for a while. And even more serious felonies. You have drive-by shootings, you have all kinds of serious things that these kids need to be placed in detention. What am I going to do as a judge if I do not have a bed and I don't have a place to put these kids? And then these kids go out and commit more crimes, commit another felony. It could be a complete disaster. I don't know what the solution is. I'm happy that Sheriff Wagasback is willing to look into opening a detention center in Assumption. That would be, geographically, that would be the best option I've seen so far. If we have to pay for beds in some of these other detention centers that are much further away, a huge burden on our sheriff's office, the transportation issue. Because every time we have juvenile court, they have to go get all these delinquents and bring them to court and then bring them back. And then, of course, anytime they make an arrest and there's a placement, they have to drive to the detention center. Right now, we're blessed that it's right across the Sunshine Bridge, but if it's further away, it's going to be a true burden. And I don't know what the solution is. I can't say that actually, I wish we'd have our own detention center in Ascension Parish, but I don't know if that's even realistic. But my fear is a gap in service, that when St. James Detention Center closes in June, that if Sheriff Wagasback's detention center is not ready, what do we do then? I just want to really stress to you that we cannot have a gap in services. We need to have a bed available for numerous juvenile delinquents at any given time. Because the reality is that we have kids that need it, and we have serious felons on both sides of the river. It's not limited to either side of the river. I used to handle juvenile court on the west side of the river. Now I handle it on the east side of the river. There are equal challenges on both sides. You have different dynamics, but we need juvenile detention beds seriously. And does anybody have any questions of me?
I have one that I'll ask, and then I'll yield the floor to other members of the council. Marilyn, from a judge's perspective, can we do arraignments by video conferencing if in the stopgap, in the interim, if we are having to use a facility, significantly outside of our jurisdiction? Can we do arraignment by video conferencing?
I personally think that would be very difficult, and I think could be challenged under the Children's Code, simply because juveniles are treated differently and handled with a little more kid gloves. Their parents have to be there. They have to have an attorney there. And if an attorney is sitting in court with me and not with the juvenile that's an hour and a half away, how's the attorney going to communicate with the juvenile? I think that raises serious issues that could be challenged.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I believe that there are several questions. I'll begin with Councilman Lambert.
What is the reason for St. James closing their
I think they
Is it
just
just funding, or did they have to come up with some upgrades?
I think both. I think DCFS now controls the licensing, and I think to bring it up to speed in order to meet the requirements, I think would cost more money than St. James Parish is willing to spend, is my understanding. I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think
They had to do some upgrades, I
it's
wasn't sure.
all goes back to money,
Chance that was.
I think.
Councilman Shakespeare.
Thank you, Judge.
Well, and that's the question I was going to ask, but to follow up on that, if St. James presently has one, and they can't afford to even keep it open, then how are we going to manage in Ascension Parish to actually build one and fund it to keep it open? How?
That's why I kind of referred to that as a fantasy.
And I'm just trying to find a solution. But, what is the dynamics of the funding that you can make the numbers work because I realize the need, and I agree with you 200%, that it's a more serious need than anybody that's not in it on a day-to-day basis can imagine. But I'm just trying to get a handle on how can we manage it to operate that and not be just cost prohibitive for the people of Ascension Parish.
And I would have a very difficult time answering that. I don't really know how St. James Parish has gone about operating St. James Youth Center and what they've done as far as their finances. I mean, I would hope that they've been very responsible with the money and tried to operate it the most efficient way that they know how. Surely it's possible to operate one, but I don't know. I know they have several dorms over there that have been closed for quite some time because they're so torn up they can't house people in them. Maybe if they had been kept up better and they had more people in them and who could pay more money, maybe that would have helped. But then again, when you have more people in the detention center, they have to hire more correctional officers to supervise them, so that might not have worked either. I really don't know. It's never going to be a win situation, sorry to say. I think it's kind of a necessary evil that's always going to cost more money than it's going to bring in.
Gentlemen, for your sake, if I can let you know, we have other presenters tonight who may be
Okay.
able to
Yeah.
to give you some insight into what some of our options are. Judge Lambert, do you have anything else you want to contribute, Marilyn, at this point? I'm going to ask.
No, not really, other than I just beg of you, don't let there be a gap in being able to place juveniles, because I don't want to have to explain that, and I don't think you do either, to the general public, that we can't lock these kids up if we have a serious felon that needs to be locked up.
Right.
That's my biggest fear.
One more
Thank
question
y'all.
from Councilman Kluwat.
Thank you, Marilyn. Appreciate you coming in, and everybody else in law enforcement, district attorney's office. I believe that we can furnish those services, and within our parish, find some way. We don't know if the other centers, we know they're under federal regulations and all that, but we don't know how they were run, how old they are, versus the new standards. But I can tell you what, we got law enforcement here within this parish that work hard every day and every night. And I'd like to use the word detention versus incarceration, is that we do have some kids out there that there's a chance. And without giving the opportunity to work with them, and with the sheriff's office, the DA, and judge chambers, to work with these children. And I know that people don't know that there's times where you look in your courtroom and you've got to make an opportunity to either try to get them in some detention and get them some time in there, or versus trying to ship them around the state, you know?
And I do look at detention as a last resort.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know that.
You know,
That's-
as a juvenile, you want to have a hope that these kids, you're going to be able to give them some help. Our state administration has cut funding terribly, has closed lots of mental health resources that we had, and so that's limiting us also to try to help keep kids out of detention. So our hands are being tied every time we turn around, either on the state level or local detention level. But I know y'all are going to do whatever you can. There's only so much money to go around, but I just would appreciate anything that could be done to help at least give us somewhere to put juveniles, if need be.
Yeah, and I know that we're going to hear from other officials and probably some more from the administration, but I think there's some opportunities for us to handle that.
Thank
And-
you, and thank all of you very much. I appreciate it. And
Marilyn,
thank you for giving me the
thank
opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much for coming in this terrible weather. We appreciate it. Ricky, would you like to come forward and give us your perspective as the district attorney? Thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members of the council. Let me begin by kind of broad brush stroking a little bit with what Judge Lambert said about the juvenile justice problem. I just got the statistics in from Louisiana Supreme Court. Ascension Parish, I'm very proud of, we've had about a 30% decrease in adult crime. These gentlemen in GPD and local law enforcement has made about 30% less arrests this year than they did last year, which resulted us filing about 30% less bills of information and indictments than we did the year before. However, the exception to that rule is our juvenile justice area. This year we filed close to 1,400, give or take, petitions in our district, 23rd Judicial District. About 50% of those are just in Ascension. A lot of them are truancy and disruptive children, etc., but some of them are felonies. So the problem is getting bigger, not smaller. But I wanted to give you a perspective, and this is my opinion. This might not be shared with the sheriff or the judge, but I don't necessarily drink that Kool-Aid about the $250 a day and take that as a hard number. And the reason I don't is because of this. Sheriff Wagaspack is interested in getting into this. He, like Sheriff Wiley in our parish, has got a kitchen. He's got some facilities already built that he can marry into a juvenile justice facility and have a, if you will, some increased returns because he's got some of that infrastructure in place already. He tomorrow, and I talked to him today, I said, Sheriff, where are you? I'm speaking to the council tonight, and I'd like to be able to tell them kind of where you are. This is pie in the sky. This is reality. And he said, well, Friday, he's got a meeting with DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services, who I understand is the gatekeeper as to whether a facility gets approved or not approved. The number I keep hearing getting thrown out by a lot of the people who are doing this business is at $250 a day or $230 a day. I did a little bit of homework, and the minimum foundation payment, the MFP payment that the Ascension Parish School System receives for students is around $8,700 a year. Divide that by 180 school days, the average child that you and I send to school here in Ascension Parish is costing us somewhere in the neighborhood of $37 a day. So my question is, how do we go from $37 a day to educate a child, which they have custody of pretty much, from 7 to 3 to $230 a day, particularly when it was in that $100 range. And it keeps leading me back to the same answer as the Department of Children and Family Services. The standards that they have are, quote unquote, now so high that is driving the cost up, and I think the sheriff's guys can tell you more about the numbers as far as the people it takes to guard children, et cetera, et cetera. Before we accept that number and ask the parish or the taxpayers or anybody else to fund that bill, I think it would behoove us to get into that a little bit deeper to see why. Is any waivers can be given? Don't get me wrong. They need to be well-fed, well cared for, and humanely treated. But it doesn't have to be the Ritz-Carlton either. So I would like to know if those things can be waived. If they can be waived, what does it take to waive them? Do we need to go to our legislators, get some legislative help in making this more reasonable? So I'd like to run those, run that down before we make a decision as to what to spend or how to spend it. I do recognize the problem, and I concur with what Judge Lambert says. We have a tremendous need for some type of juvenile detention. I'm on the side of more detention. Some people are on, of course, I'm a prosecutor. Some people are on the other side. They tend to more not be. But I can tell you, just looking at our files, there's a tremendous need there. But I just would ask you that before we make any long-term hard financial commitments of that magnitude, let's see how we can do it most economical, because the problem's getting bigger. So if it's $200 a day and we got 30 today, if our numbers play out over the next 20 years, we could have 3-4 times that number. And then at $250 a day, you're talking about a multi-million-dollar per year problem that I just wanted you to enter into this eyes wide open, knowing what you're facing. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have, and offer our office's assistance in anything you need. Stats-wise, how many people we have there, send there, et cetera.
Thank you, Ricky. I want to let you know I have spoken on more than one occasion this week to Angie Batto, who is the licensing director for DCSF. And they are willing to come and present to this body. They could not do it at this point tonight. It was rather short notice for them to get someone here. They did send me a copy of all of the licensing requirements, which I'd be happy to forward to anyone who would like to have them. And but they want to come after a decision is made with regard to Sheriff Wagasback's facility, so that they come here with the very best knowledge that they can have when they come. But we are getting cooperation from DCFS.
I don't dispute that, but I keep hearing what they'd like to have.
Right.
We like to, the sheriff's office would like to have twice the uniformed officers and twice the cars. We'd like to have twice the number of assistant district attorneys that we have. You'd like to have unlimited funds to fix roads. So I think because of this cost and the enormity of it, we're beyond what we'd like to have. What we need to do is sit down and say, this is what we can do, period. So we got to fit this peg into this hole.
I feel certain that they will come. Now, whether they will be willing to give us much leeway, I do not know the answer to that, but I do think they'll come. I just wanted to let the public know, and you know, that they are helping us as much as they can at this point. So I appreciate that. Any questions, gentlemen? Councilman Schneider.
And Ricky, and you mentioned about $250. I think we were led to believe that the cost could go up to in the 400s, Tommy. It was mentioned before.
Number I always heard was 250. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, then that must have been something else. But at $250 a day, that's a good bit of money, and I want to reiterate as a school teacher in this parish, and going into the next day's classroom and seeing a young person that just committed a serious burglary the night before walking in your classroom with the rest of the kids, simply because there was no place to put them, is a shame at this time and age. So hopefully we can work something out to make this happen. And I agree with you. It's sometimes they need to face the realization before you get a chance to rehabilitate also. And so it would be a good thing to move forward. Hopefully we can figure out how to work this out.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Councilman Satterley.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is for you, Mr. Bevan, or not, but can anyone here estimate the cost going forward if we do nothing post June 30th and St. James closes down its doors? This is sort of a follow-up to what Todd said a minute ago and what Kent is talking about as well. In other words, we've got this, I copied $470,000 in the budget. That's a doubling from what we were doing. The beds have gone up from whatever it was, 130 to 230 or 250, whatever it's going to be. But 6 months from now, is it going to double again between there and the next fiscal year? Or is it something we can just manage while we're thinking about this? Because this is going to be a super decision to make.
That's
whether
what
or not we build a facility here and we buy into, we can do that, or we can't do that with waivers from the state or whatever on not doing Ritz-Carlton stuff versus just health and safety and welfare for these individuals, et cetera. Do we have a number like that, or is anybody willing to project a number like that? Or
I'll take
maybe
this is my general. I know if that happens, the court's gonna have to find somewhere to put them. I think the parish would be kind of at the mercy of the facility of wherever the child is placed. If Judge Lambert had to put that child in a facility in Shreveport, whatever that facility in Shreveport wanted, they would probably bill the parish, so that could fluctuate, be whatever that going rate is at that facility at that time. You could probably ask these gentlemen, they could tell you more about what the transportation cost is, but I don't think they can transport inmates one at a time, so they'd have to send 2 officers each time they make a transport from a facility in Shreveport, so you're looking at 2 officers. Let them do that math, but I mean, transportation is an immense, I mean, I know how busy we keep them just on adults, and they're chained together in one bus. So when you got to start bringing them from different areas, it does get costly.
And Madam Chairman, also, I didn't hear this. We're not the only parish, so if we do nothing, St. James is closing down, they have their juvies, and then other parishes are contributing. As Judge Lambert and others continue to send these various individuals from all these parishes to, quote, new places all over the state, Florida, Shreveport, whatever, would not those facilities eventually become overburdened by federal mandates and stuff, and a real vicious cycle hits us? I mean, I don't think I share with Judge Lambert's comment. I think she said she was horrified. This is horrible, because it could balloon, in my mind, to double, triple, or more so quick, it can make your head swim. Am I missing something here? I mean,
No, sir, the truth is this is a big problem. The truth is this is a hard decision. The truth is it's not going to get easier, and the truth, this is about to get into your pocket like you've never seen it get in your pocket before. I'm on the Louisiana Sentencing Commission. I can tell you with the tune of $200 million in cuts has cost the Department of Corrections. They've closed prisons. You close one prison, guess what? You got to get those 2,000 inmates at that prison to another prison. That doubles up the staff. So yes, that domino effect is taking place. And I'm not trying to tell you there's an easy answer. I'm just trying to tell you that 2 things. It's coming. It's big. Number 2 is we have to, I think, roll up our sleeves and get with the people that can give us a break, at least some type of break-in period. I just don't think those numbers are accurate.
So it sounds to me like I've only served a year, but to have a change that's been doubled just in that short period of time, but then to say that doubling may not work because St. James is going out of business.
So we didn't double it again.
You could double it again.
Double it again.
And so we don't want to be, as a parish council, I think, going down the line and saying, well, we put our head in the sand, and we budgeted, I think, $470,000 more than twice last year, and everything's gonna be fine even to the end of the year, because it well may not be, especially with the transportation cost you mentioned, and even I'm sure there's a whole lot more going on. And it might, maybe Judge Lambert would want to come back and comment on this, or I don't know if any of the judges are here, but it seems to me it could actually affect their decision-making processes on what are they going to do with these folks, knowing that they don't really have, places to send them and so forth. They're going to, I don't know, what's a good word, be a little softer, Judge Leonard, be a little more lenient or not, or maybe I'm just totally off base there or whatever. I see you nodding your head no. A bad boy's a bad boy, and what you're going to do, they're coming for you. We don't have a place to put them. This is serious, serious business.
Most of these are pretrials, correct? Most of these detainees are pretrials. Yes. Once they're convicted, they become a problem of the Office of Juvenile Justice, which, as you know, Louisiana has adopted something called the Missouri model. We've gone away from a detention type of juvenile facility to another model, which is more of a rehabilitation, community-based juvenile plan. That's not my wishes necessarily, but that's philosophical. I won't get into that. But my point to you is that we're just talking the time period between arrest and conviction, and Department of Office of Juvenile Justice determines where they go, what they do with them at that point. So, that's growing just in that area.
So to be sure, when you said, you testified earlier that there were 1,400 petitions in the juvie petitions, I guess, in the 23rd judicial, and 50% was AP. Am I to understand 700 then, or half of 1,400 were these pretrial individuals?
Not all of them were incarcerated. There was
but they were nonetheless detained by days or more, or a day or more.
Some of them were
had
simply
to pay for that.
summoned, some of them may have been issued a summons, some of them may have been issued everything from a misdemeanor summons all the way up to a major felony arrest with no bond possible. So it's the gamut. Councilman Satterley, it's not necessarily all those are detainees. That's not correct. The number of detainees.
Okay, I understand now.
Judges
I got
use
it.
a lot of discretion before they detain a child. It's kind of a test of danger to himself, danger to the public, nature of the crime, the evidence against the child. There's a whole myriad of factors that the court applies to determine whether that individual is held or not held, primarily as public safety. Does the judge feel that person is a risk to public safety? A lot of times we stand up and argue there are. Sometimes the defense attorney argues they're not. The court has to make that decision. But not nearly that many get incarcerated. The only ones incarcerated are the ones that the court has said, hold this child pending trial. Judge, is that a good summary?
I thank you.
Mr. Martinez.
Ricky, we still do house arrest and ankle bracelets on some? Or have we gotten away?
We do a combination of house arrest, incarceration, to a note home with your parents. We do a combination of that. So yes, sir, it is still used.
Any further questions? Councilman Lohr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The way I see it, we need to figure out a short-term strategy and also a long-term strategy, and the long-term may actually be more of a medium-term based on the 6-month time frame. But yeah, just on principle and logic alone, I know there's been some discussion around the idea of having a center here. Let me throw my hat in that ring just on principle alone. Of course, we don't have the cost yet, but if you think about the fact that we are, of course, as we heard tonight, the biggest parish already in terms of participation in this and the need for it with the growth in the petrochem sector that's happening now, that's going to continue to, we're going to continue to be the largest parish by far and have the biggest need. We're a very young parish, lots of children. In 5-10 years, we could be facing a very, very serious crisis and demand for this. So I think the key, as has been said, is what exactly is the cost per day that we need to fund it. What is that 250 made of? And I'd like to ask the parish president if he could talk to St. James parish president Timmy Roussel, parish president to parish president, about exactly some of the what it takes, what some of those details are from an operating standpoint. And we can get those costs. We can throw up a cost when talking with the sheriff, perhaps, about what it would take for construction of a facility here, operations, all that kind of stuff. We really just need to get some figures here so we can determine a strategy based on those numbers, and then we can look at funding in terms of millages, what that needs to be, what needs to come out of our budget on an annual basis. I want to remind people, too, we're constantly looking for ways to fund roads. So everything like this, these unfunded mandates, and the parish president has said this before, is a continual drain on a road budget, which that is probably top of mind. This may not be top of mind for some people, but as this continues to double and eat up our funding, it's not something we can ignore. So it's just a matter of getting our facts and figures straight and figuring out the approach. Thanks.
Councilman
Yeah,
Lambert?
Rick, I'd ask Judge Lambert about it, but President Roussel is shutting down St. James, I guess, for the reason that I know the cost is up. What does he plan on doing with his facility, I guess? How many beds it hold in St.
I
James?
think maximum capacity of St. James is around 70 beds. Is that 80, 70, 80? 420 pods.
420 pods.
4 20-person pods. I understand.
I don't know if you spoke with President Roussel.
I did. I think it's costing them about $1.5 million a year out of their budget.
Out of their
I think
budget.
of course, they rent some bed space to Ascension and other parishes, and I still think they're losing a lot of money. They have a tax that they passed when they built the facility to fund the facility. They feel that they're getting a disproportionate cost to benefit of housing their own juveniles. So I think they're prepared to mothball it or try to rent it or do whatever they can. But they just want to get out of the juvenile detention business unless they can get the money.
Maybe
to
an
pay for
option
it.
for us to look at it if they plan on renting it, or I know it's in another parish, but still, we have to look at something pretty quick, Judge Lambert said, within 6 months, we need a place to put them, and if we have to go with this funding that we need, the meal that we have to put on the people, it might, people don't like to hear taxes, but, we have to do something. So it's an option. I know they have a facility there. Now, I'm hearing upgrades, that there's upgrades tremendously costly to do what they need to do, or?
There are. It's the number of people you have to watch,
Yeah.
the number of inmates, number of guards to inmates, the educational, the type of medical care and educational requirements, and by the time you add it all up,
Very
that's
costly.
what they're driving the cost at. What I'm not convinced of is that it has to be that.
Yeah,
Is there something?
we can
I mean-
compromise with, yeah.
Yeah, we need transportation, but it doesn't have to be a Rolls.
Right.
Let's use a bike.
Mr. Martinez.
Appreciate it.
From what I understand, no matter if you have, how many prisoners you have in there, you have to staff up for the amount that the facility is licensed for. And if you got 7 in your capacity of 80, you still got to have enough people there to man the facility for 80 people. So that's where a lot of your cost is.
Thank you.
All right. Gentlemen, any further questions of the district attorney? Thank you for your
Thank you very
comments.
much for your time.
Thank you, Ricky. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, gentlemen, for your questions. And now I'd like to ask the sheriff if he will come and give us the law enforcement perspective.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. This detention center, make no mistake about it, and I will reaffirm what the good judge and the good DA said about detaining juveniles. These are not young people who need a spanking or little rascals. These are chronic, habitual felons. Some of them are dangerous. Be assured that, and I wouldn't want to walk in the shoes of a judge, but I know that the last thing that a judge would do and would thoughtfully exhaust all other options besides order a 14-year-old to be incarcerated. So there are no kids there that are not chronic or violent offenders, none of them. We used to want to give them a quick treatment, okay, of maybe some incarceration, maybe a little time out, if you will. Now, with the mindset, at least in law enforcement, is we want them locked up so they won't commit other crimes, continued criminal enterprise. What I would like to do, if you'd allow me, I've got Lieutenant Kyle Hanna here, who runs our juvenile division, and I asked him to take a profile of 3 cases. I think, is it 6 or 3? I want him to come up here and just tell you, without identifying the violators, obviously, but just to give you a snapshot of the type of juvenile offender that the court system, that the prosecution system, that law enforcement, and that neighborhoods have to deal with. Because I could also be mindful that everyone who's in there with the long list of crimes, there's a long list of victims as well who have every expectation that there would be swift and judicial consequences for their behavior. All right. Kyle, are you ready?
Kyle, thank you for coming.
Madam Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. What I did was took some juveniles that we deal with quite frequently, and I'm going to give you a first example of a young man who plays sports, but he has a problem. We first, when he was 11 years old, was his first arrest, and since that time he's had about 10 more. 2 of those arrests were sex crimes, and we did detain him, and he was held. And what happened was, once he was adjudicated or whatnot and placed on home incarceration, or even pending. Once he had his pre-trial and adjudication was pending, he would get out on the home incarceration, and he would violate that home incarceration. And due to violating that bracelet, he would be placed back in detention and would remain there for a long time. So we've held this young man in there for months, nearly a year. But once again, this is a young man who's been arrested for everything from just being disorderly at home to hitting someone to really serious felonies of in the sexual nature, sex crimes, and you know, he's one of our chronic juveniles that we've dealt with frequently. We have others out there that we deal with just like this, and it's scary from a law enforcement perspective to know that there's a chance that the bed's full and we can't place these type of kids. Well, who's at risk? But you know, other children out there. I'm gonna move quickly on to a young lady. She was first arrested. She was 13 years old. This is not one that we would deem chronic. Most of our chronic offenders are the male persuasion, but she is one who ungovernable. You know, hit her mother. Time after time, my deputy said to keep going out there. Her mom would keep calling, disorderly. She hit me, and we finally had to place her. And she did until her adjudication, her admit deny came up, her pretrial, her arraignment, and they placed her on home incarceration. So once again, she gets on home incarceration. What does she do? She runs away from home. And this happened not once, but about 3 or 4 times. And, you know, although, albeit she's not the chronic violent, but she is one that if she's putting herself in harm's way, not only is she giving her mom trouble at home, but she's going to end up, something could happen to her very badly, and this is a repeat offender. And moving next, I want to talk about another young lady who was first arrested at the age, she had just turned 10 years old. Age of culpability is 10, in order you can be arrested. And she was arrested for fighting at 10 years old. She got to the point where it escalated, and this young lady here has been arrested probably about nearly 20 times and placed in detention probably about 8 to 10 times. And she's a young lady that the schools can't contend with her because she gets too much trouble. She's moved to another parish. She can't go to school there. Moved back to Ascension, and she's back to the same thing. She's fighting at school. She's being disruptive. We can't just send her home with her mother. We have to place her because of the problems that she causes at home. And it's just, you know, and, you know, she's one that has started at the age of 10, and she continues. And so she's safer, believe it or not, in detention. Because if you let her, like the other young lady, you let her go home, she's going to harm somebody else, and she's going to be in harm's way as well. And, you know, they go after him and do the very best they can, prosecute him, and that job is done. But once they get that step out the door, they're going to revert back to the same thing. So this young lady here is synonymous with this. It's just a shame. You know, it really is. When you start at 10 years old and you've been in detention by the age of 15, you know, about 10 times, and some pretty long durations when she was placed. And she's one that, in the outside setting, I don't know, it's a shame to say, as she grows older, and if this formula with this young lady, she's going to end up continuously getting in trouble. The next, I'm going to move over to a young man who's a good athlete, excellent student. He just has one problem. He can't keep himself from getting involved in breaking into cars, breaking into homes, stealing trucks. He first got arrested for damaging a bunch of mailboxes with several other juveniles, and he was placed in detention back in 2011 at the age of 14. He was held for a time, and he got out and you know, get back on track. And what does he do? Well, he and some other young men decide that they're going to throw rocks at cars on Highway 429. Happened to throw a rock at a car and struck that vehicle. The lady lost control, hit a pole, and almost died. You know, the DA's office did a great job pursuing that through the whole process. They did stay in detention for a while. They were placed on home incarceration, and not long after being removed from home incarceration, this same young man was involved in multiple. When I say multiple, I'm talking 20 plus vehicle burglaries this past summer. Okay, let alone he hadn't been out probably a month and started committing these car burglaries. So he once again was detained for probably I want to say close to 2 months in detention. He was placed on probation with Office of Juvenile Justice, state probation, placed on a home incarceration, and was going through the whole process. And this December, the same young man is involved in our criminal investigations division, was hit with some more burglaries, and he was arrested again for multiple counts of burglaries, homes, cars. So this is a chronic. This is one of the kids that's one of our chronic problems that has been in 3 different times in 2012 alone. And who's to say that if he gets out again, he won't do the same? But I think we got our teeth in him good, and this is one of the young men that's going to pay the price, and he may well have his probation revoked and spend the rest of his juvenile life possibly in detention. The next young man I want to hit on real quick is just the opposite. He's not your chronic offender that we deal with numerous times for serious felonies. This was a very serious crime. He's only been arrested once. He's 14 years old. Never has been in trouble with us, but I'm sure y'all have heard in the media the accidental, the negligent homicide, the shooting of the young man back December 27th, I want to say. Well, he was a young man that had the handgun, which was stolen out of some burglaries, and it discharged and killed another young man. He's in detention as we speak, going through the process. Never has been in trouble before, but he was heading down that wrong path. And lastly, I would like to just speak about another female who, once again, she at a very early age, 10 years old, was arrested for, like the other young lady, for battery, which is striking another person. She continued to get arrested for batteries. It graduated to where she was aggravated battery, hitting people with objects, and she is one of our females that has been a problem, chronic, and not just one of your mom can't control her, and the judge places her in home incarceration. She violates it, and she gets placed in for contempt of court. She has person crimes, batteries, aggravated batteries, repeat offenses that we have to just keep placing in detention, because if you release her back to her mom and her dad, she inevitably, within 2 weeks, a month, she is back in trouble again. So this is kind of a snapshot of who we deal with, and very serious, some of very, very serious felons, from robberies to involving weapons and persons, property crime. So that's some of the profiles that we have, and we have some of them who just gets arrested one time. They get placed on home incarceration. The crime is not a major crime, but they violate that home incarceration, and they placed back in detention, and they'll be held because they just can't seem to do the right thing and stay within the bounds of those rules of home incarceration. So, if there's any questions at this time.
Thank you, Kyle. I would like to reserve questions for the sheriff later and ask the council to recognize that.
I know those are compelling stories, and we wanted to just kind of hit you in the face with the reality of society and reality of the society in the parish that we represent. It is compelling when you talk about a 10-year-old that enters the criminal justice system. Frankly, our role, and we just wish that prayer and a golden touch could solve those kinds of things, and you saw all of the efforts that were made, the system makes, which is counsel and release, which is go to court, which is warnings, which is probation, which is home incarceration. All of those things typically are used. Now, sometimes there's a rapid, they're not used for obvious reason because of the nature of the crime. So leave here tonight knowing this much. There are young people in Ascension Parish that need to be locked up, and the number is growing. We averaged, getting to the point now, Council, we averaged, in the last month, we've averaged about 13 a day. The math on that's about $3,000. If we continue averaging that, which I couldn't predict if we would or we wouldn't, some of it's cyclical, you're talking over $1 million of costs at $230 a day. What do you do? Well, your options to me are self-evident. One, you continue doing what you're doing now through St. James, which you continue to fund a gamble on how much it'll be. You budgeted 470,000. You spent 459 last year, all right? And you hope that we get another option like Sheriff Wagasback's option. That's the best one I see in the immediate. And I qualify that because I want to talk about some self-determination in this parish. That would mean that from the law enforcement standpoint, we go another, whatever, 12, 14 miles to Assumption Parish to travel and pick up and ferry back and forth to court and what have you with our violators. The second option would be, frankly, is to levy the 1 mil that you legally are empowered to do. It's, I yield to your counsel, but we read it pretty simple and pretty explicit, that you can do it. I am the tax collector for the sheriff, for the parish of Ascension. A mill, I'm told, as late as Friday, is worth about $950,000. A lot of money. Is it enough to run a 50, 60-bed facility that we might discuss as an option? No, it is not. Why? Well, the ratios that the DA kind of touched on, the DFS, they have a lot more restricted ratios on running a facility like this than we have running the Ascension Parish Jail, the one you own and the one that I run. So we figure that best guess, and this is sitting around kind of on a napkin, if you will, discussing it in the last several days, our best guess based on the DFS formulas is that we would need upwards of 35 employees to run this. Now, if you're looking at a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 salary for these people, name it, with benefits, et cetera, then you can see the ticket is running. We do not want to get into a situation, this is Sheriff Wiley talking, and I implore you, we do not want to get into a situation or involve ourselves in a function or an entity like this without it being adequately funded, because you'll be back where you were and where you are today with it. I think that if we, and that would be the court system, that would be the prosecutorial system, that would be the law enforcement community, the elected community, I think that if we would, if we're trying to take the direction of the Ascension Parish model, you own enough property. It's right there where the Ascension Parish Jail is. We bought more property than we needed, very prudent on our part. We have enough property. That would mean that we, in theory, could use some of the integral pre-existing services there. Jail, laundry, food, etc. May be problematic, but we think those are things that we might be able to do. So that means your facility is a little bit cheaper. And I will say this, and this is clearly not to impugn any agency or any parish, but frankly, sheriffs know how to run facilities. That's what we do. And the St. James model, I mean, I assume it was run quite well. I think, frankly, what happened there was the architectural design was flawed. It was a good idea 30 years ago with the 420 pods, but if you look at the DFS regs now, they have to be in a 1 or 2 cell lockdown. All right, they have to be. So the architectural model there is, I would guess, obsolete in the first place. So now you have property there, but ladies and gentlemen, you already own property. I don't know if Sheriff Wiley wants to get into the detention business, but I will tell you that we know how to do it. And if you want to further discuss that, you own the property. You have a jump start if you're willing to do it, which is levying the 1 mil. But I would think that we would really be challenged by taking a look at the big picture, not unlike we did with the parish jail, when there was some interest in adding 100 beds. And we rethought that, and frankly, I said, I'm going to be back here again, and we're all going to look like we didn't plan ahead when a couple of years later we're overcrowded again. And we built 600 beds, so we went to 600 beds. And we're in okay shape with our adult population. So I think that and we also did some creative things, frankly, that you can consider with per diem income. It by no means saves your budget, but it does ease some of the pain when you're taking some per diem paying inmates, the state inmates and the federal inmates that we take. So there's an option with the Ascension model where you can do what St. James is doing, which is hire out some of the beds. You can't not do anything. We have to have a place to put people that are chronic offenders as opposed to sending them home. So that's kind of it. I will be glad to answer questions or my staff.
Gentlemen? Any questions?
Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Lambert?
Yes, sir.
The gap that we were talking about in June, I just want to make sure, between the ankle bracelets and possibly having a place here, do you have a location if you have to house?
No, I do not. You mean a pre-existing facility?
Just something that when this,
No, I do not.
when
And
this.
I'm not
thing-
sure, frankly, that Sheriff Wagaspack will be ready if he gets clearance.
Exactly.
So, you know, we'll be challenged with finding places, and we might have to go, you know, an hour and a half away. And obviously, these are things that if we have to do them, we will do them. There's other places across the state of Louisiana. Certainly, they're not attractive. I would offer this as we go forward. There's another component that we've never had, and this is the shelter. This is the other model, which is we maintain the essential need for the detention center. You just heard some stories. No doubt we need it. There are those other kids, those 10-year-olds maybe, that now we're telling you stories about that are 15, that if we had a shelter, and I'm talking about a professionally run full-time shelter where maybe some of those kids who we're spanking and sending home, I don't mean that we're literally spanking them, but that we're giving them the, you know, the first introduction to law enforcement, and they go back into a dysfunctional family, maybe we could rescue some of those kids. But that would take another entity. That would take another staffing. Most parishes, ladies and gentlemen, of our size have that. It's funding, and that's what I'm talking about. If we go to the public, oh, I know this is I'll be the one to throw it on the floor. If we had another mill, now you got $2 million. You got one that you can levy without a vote. Now, whether you're going to do it or not remains to be seen, but you can, specific to detention services. If you went and got another mill, and we told the public, this is what this is for, public. This is to put kids away that need it, and this is also for a comprehensive plan for youth violators. I'd take my chances with it with the general public, and quite frankly, they need to know that it's going to cost them either way. They didn't vote for a detention tax, did they? Are you paying for a detention center now? Yes, you are. And you're paying $500,000, and it's a bullet. We arrest almost 600 juveniles a year. We average that. All right. Not only is your per diem cost going up, as you painfully are aware, the head count is going up. We had you averaged, and we averaged in the last quarter probably 10 people a day there. Now, whether that holds, time will tell.
Thank you for that extension on that. Thank you.
Councilman Satter?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sheriff Wiley, I was pushing the pencil a little bit when you gave the salary of $30,000 to $50,000 per year to maybe hire, I think you estimated 35 staff. If I did that right, it's 1.4 million. And I heard you talk about we can legislate or levy a 1 mil tax because we can do so without vote. It's about, I think you said 950,000, so there's
Yes,
a
sir.
difference there. But I think I got clarity when you said we could go and try to get another mill, which would have to be approved, I guess, by the people. And I want to be sure I got my arms around it. We would pretty much have to have the 2 mills because of the difference just between the staff, much less any
Absolutely.
capital improvements that would have to occur, whether we
Debt
you said we
service,
have the property and so forth and
maintenance.
so on.
Yes, sir.
And even that, quite frankly, in a matter of time, could become insufficient depending on, and I see Judge Lambert nodding her head again, you know, how much worse this juvenile crime goes, because it's going the opposite direction of the 30% reduction you mentioned for the adults. So I just want everybody to be sure, did I heard the same things, and I'm not doing fuzzy math here. We're talking probably about half and a half as much as 2 mills to fund it if we decide not to put our problem on someone else and pay them, and we can go with a
If the
solution like
fund-
that. But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it'd be great if we could, like, get all this in some sort of a, Madam Chairman, an official report. I don't know if that would require a motion from all the folks in their advice, in their whatever, or how this is to proceed. We've talked about this once before. This is the second time, and obviously, we don't want to keep having it as a discussion item. Eventually, we're going to have it, I think as Councilman Lohr said, as an actionable item, whether we're going to do a short-term or a medium or long-term approach to it. So I don't know, Terry, if you're looking tonight for motions or whatever on it, or it's just for discussion at this point again. I think you said it was for education and Q&A, which we've done a lot of by the Parish Council, but we're going to have to act pretty soon.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilman Satterley. And in answer to your question, at the point in time where a plan has come together, we will certainly present it through this committee for action. Councilman Shea Snyder.
Well, and certainly, thank you, Sheriff Wiley. I appreciate the insight, and I think you're absolutely right with the decision we made for the jail is to prepare for the long run, and I think it's a very prudent decision, except for the standpoint, from the parish standpoint, even though we did was fiscally responsible and by far the best decision, we didn't allow for funding mechanisms as we come down the line. And I think President Martinez was saying, how much more does it cost us now just doing what we had to do? But the reality of the situation is the cost, so we got to make sure that whatever number or millage we get up to, and I don't know whether whether 2 mills can do it, and it might be 3 or 4. But we need to make sure whatever we do, that it's adequately funded. And I think an example, President Martin, you were talking about the other day, the actual cost of what it costs the parish to fund the jail now.
It used to cost about $1.2 million. Now it costs about $2 million in operation, then we got $1 million in debt service, and we get about $500,000 back from the sheriff. So round it off, it's about $2.5 million a year we spend on adult prisons.
And so, and there's no real funding mechanism from that. It comes out of the general fund. And so we need to make sure this is a growing problem from to the point where the sheriff decided to become very efficient in what we're doing. I think we're spending our money very, very wisely, and we're doing all the right things, but we got to make sure it's adequately funded, because ultimately that $2 million comes out of what we could be doing in a general fund to build roads, fund some other things. So I'd like to make sure that we're a standalone entity in taking care of our juveniles correctly, and I also believe very strongly in Ascension Parish taking care of itself. And using the model we had for the jail, I think it's a very good model to do it properly and get some added revenues by other parishes that can't do this. And I think we could make it the proper way. So I think the right idea is out there. We just need to be willing to sit down and take a look at the hard numbers and then ask people if they're willing to do it. And if we are, then we need to move forward.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions just for clarity so that as we think about this going forward, I know what we're up against. If we had a multi-jurisdictional facility, can Ascension Parish own a part of a facility in another parish, or do we have to just be contracted in a cooperative endeavor agreement to pay our share?
Well, my short answer would be yes, but I think we could, but I would yield. I mean, obviously, it would be in the devil would be in the details. What model are you talking about, Madam Chairman?
If St. James were, let's say another facility was available to us, and we could own a part of that ground, and not, and the sheriffs of all the parishes that were part ownership of this could sit on a board, and they decided how this thing was going to run and what the costs were. Is that possible? I mean, I'm just asking for the sake of, are there options out there that have us being a part owner of something as opposed to taking on this responsibility in Ascension Parish? Not that that would be the workable solution.
As I recall, the St. James model was multi-parish back in the day. Ascension, I think, owned 20 beds, maybe. Now, clearly, it wasn't ownership because it went moot there. I don't know how many years. I'm sure there's some things you can do. I'm not sure, Madam Chairman, that ownership would be the thing, but I do clearly see where if we could snap our fingers and have one right there on the same property as the adult jail, or indeed Sheriff Wagasback had one, which he certainly is endeavoring to do, that we couldn't enter into a contract with them, not to own the facility, but to be guaranteed X number of the beds, and maybe in the process you could negotiate the per diem down to something far from $230. I don't, ownership, I don't know. I'd yield to the lawyers and the judges. I see some problems with ownership.
Okay. Also, and Mr. President, you might be able to answer this, is there a cost-sharing mechanism? There's mental health issues for these young people. We already have a tax for mental health issues. Are those funds available to address this issue? Likewise, the school board, the educational component of the
We do send mental health counselors now to the jail. This happened a couple of years ago. I think we made an agreement with the sheriff. He's asked for them, and we did put one or two counselors there. We also, in the past, have paid for counselors at the schools, so to deal with some of the kids that were giving them a lot of problems. So there is some, but the mental health tax has to go to mental health. It doesn't have to. I mean, you can't use it for incarceration. I mean, it's dedicated.
Right, I understand that.
So.
Just trying to make sure we're utilizing all those other funds that might be available. What about the school board? The educational component with juvenile detention, I understand, is a major cost. Does the school board contribute in any way, or could they, to the support of juveniles in a facility that we owned?
Well, it's my understanding that they provide the services as a part of their responsibility without
Okay.
cost.
Very good.
Yes. And they're under obligation to do it. I mean, I know they're glad to do it as well, but when you have a child in the parish that is eligible for education, they shall do it. So, and they've been doing it at St. James.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. Any other questions, gentlemen? Councilman Lambert?
Yeah, Sheriff, Sheriff Wagasback, does he have a facility started already or nothing? He's going to be starting from ground up.
Site prep.
He gets site prep.
Yes, right. He's building a dormitory-style facility that he had plans to do an adult facility. And then when the sense of urgency arose with St. James, he thought he would just do that with the dormitory style, and that's not in compliance with the DFS regulations. So then he said, well, okay, I'll see if my old jail, which is cells, would fit. So it's a kind of a dicey thing whether or not it'll fly, but he's endeavoring to do it, and he's a good sheriff, and it's a good option for us, whether it's a short-term or a long-term option. That's at the behest of all of us, but in particular you. I would ask that you, and I appreciate the burden that adult jail has, and it is. I mean, I'm in over $3 million a year on staffing. Jails cost. They don't make money. They are a burden, but they're a necessary burden. I would ask you to keep your eye on the ball. The sense of urgency here is a juvenile detention center. Now, if you want to do it in Globo package, I mean, have at it. But the clock is ticking. If we're going to engage something in Ascension, and quite frankly, if the Assumption model doesn't fly, then we really better get busy with options.
Jeff, one more question. If the people were generous enough and they supported us to say 3 or 4 meals for detention, juvenile detention, could we or should we include that the operation of an adult jail in that millage in order to give some relief to the current parish budget with regard to detention of adults?
Well, I mean, that's a tactical and political question. I don't know that. Clearly, I mean, quite frankly, you want to throw 2 more meals in, you can help pay for my My staff.
We can do it.
No,
I
we don't
don't
want to
know
do that.
I know that the general public, and some of them are going to be viewing this throughout the next couple of weeks, they need to be reminded that this is a necessary component of a society. And we have a prison, a jail that we run quite well, and we do as much as we can to save money and to get a return on our money with per diem inmates. We do revenue sharing with parish government. We may be able to do some of that on this juvenile facility. I think that if all entities buy in to the plan, they're all going to buy in on the sense of urgency. Everybody knows we have to do something. Everybody does in the criminal justice system. I hope that you also agree with that.
Councilman Kluwer?
So,
Yeah. Jeff, thank you for coming. But what Mike got an assumption, I mean, what's the word now? I know you said that he's trying to figure out whether it's doable or not, you know?
Well,
And I think
I'm
that's the
hoping he gets
best
a green light
alternative
Friday.
we've got right now.
yes,
All right.
that's correct. Right now,
All
that's
right?
the best thing.
But I'm going to tell you this, if we continue to work in the rent-a-bed system with some other parish, whether it's a cooperative agreement, whatever it is, I mean, I know in the last quarter of last year, there was a sense of urgency about the St. James facility, well, for most of last year. And it's not turning out real good, you know? There's a lot of things been done, legislature and things like that. So I
There's-
think the long term is us building something, and whether that's a total facility where you're at there, that's what it is.
I think that Madam Chairman, there are models out there that some of our staff did site visits in the last several months that are multi-parish already. So you have some pre-existing models. I don't know that they're ownership models, but they clearly are management models and bed sharing models out there. Florida Parishes has one clearly. So there are ways to do this. Now, the devil is in, quite frankly, getting everybody together. I don't know. I like the idea if it's adequately funded. So you'll know as I leave here for this meet. I like the idea if it's adequately funded that Ascension Parish has a detention center. We could build it with the beds sufficient to get the other two parishes as a priority in our judicial system, and they pay a reasonable per diem. I like that idea if it's a comprehensive plan with a shelter. Parishes our size have these. And these are the things that I think going forward, the public, if educated, I think that there would be some appetite for this. The sense of urgency is obvious.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
President.
Mr. President?
On the assumption model, how many beds are they talking about, 80? 20? So, under that scenario, if you wanted to lease out 20 beds and pay whether you got, I think that's kind of was the downfall of St. James. If you want to hold 20 beds for you and you only pay when they show up, I think it would be a more prudent thing, and it would work and make it financially feasible, whether it would be Ascension or whatever. If you actually took 1 year, paid a contract, X amount of dollars for 30 beds. And if you had to do any more, 20 beds, if you had to do any more, then you'd pay more. But you could probably get a better deal on it that way and pay no matter what. And then that would guarantee Assumption Parish that they would be getting paid at least for the 20 beds every year. They would have to deal with the other 40, but I think if you're going to get with some other parish, I think that's the way to do it, to guarantee yourself the beds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gentlemen, I thank you for your interest and your attention, and certainly I thank all of those who have come today and participated in this exercise in educating the council and the public as well about the urgency of this matter. I would like to ask that those who have participated perhaps work together with the sheriff, and let's get a plan. And we will have you bring that to us, and I think that the will of this council is to help you to solve this problem.
What's the time frame?
As ASAP. ASAP. Sheriff, what do you think how quickly could we put something together as an action item for the Finance Committee?
Well, I don't know. I mean, are you talking about a single entity, Ascension Parish?
Options.
Or are you
Options.
talking about multi-parish? I mean, because clearly that involves a little more planning and bureaucracy with that.
I think what I would like to see, and everybody might be able to agree with me on this, that we need an interim issue, because we can't get a facility built by June 30th.
No.
So we need an interim plan, something you all would deem from the law enforcement community and the judiciary to be appropriate in the interim. And then we could continue to discuss, but perhaps get in the next 2 months a solution to how we move forward on a long-term solution. I'm not a believer in kicking the can down the road. We have the opportunity in this parish to control our own fate, and I think we have the people in place to do that, and the will of this council is to do it. And I'd like to move forward as soon as possible.
Well, I will offer myself and the professional assets that my department has at any meeting that you shall call.
Okay.
And clearly, we do have and want to have input into the direction of this. So I stand prepared. I don't know how quick we do that. Could we, I agree with you. The first priority is to see what the heck we're going to do in July or June if Sheriff Wagaspax is not a viable option. All right. Now, hopefully we'll get a clarity on that by the end of the week. If it's a no, then I don't know what we'll do, frankly. All right. We will find something, so I know all the viewers are going to be, the world won't come to an end, and we will find a place to put these violators. It will be uncomfortable, and it will be disadvantageous for us to do it, and it probably won't be a penny cheaper for you, whether it's Bossier or whether it's Calcasieu or God knows where. But we'll find a spot for these kids that need to be locked up.
Well, my hope is that in the first quarter of this year, we will have resolved this issue, and that we will be moving forward in a direction that is positive for the young people that we serve. Yes, Kent?
President Martinez, what is going to be the method that they go about? Obviously, we would need somebody coming to us with recommendations, options. What would the method be to try to get to that point?
Well, I think we need to wait until we get a decision on whether Assumption Parish is going to be certified and move forward, and then from there, that would give you an interim option. And then if you want to look at long-range plans, then I think you should, we could do that and look at the option of building our own at some point. I think the Assumption plan is about $130 a day, and as I said, if you would maybe book it for a year in advance and get maybe $110 a day, do 20 rooms, and still stay within that $500,000 budget for now. And I think that gives us time to put together a plan and look at the long-range plan and talk to, like the sheriff said, to look at the shelter and also look at maybe building our own center. So, I mean, but in the meantime, if Assumption works and it can be done by June, July, that kind of relieves us and gives us a little time to work on a major plan. Agreed, Sheriff?
Mr. President, if you will work together with me on a time frame and
Yes, I'll
call
work
these
with
meetings.
the sheriff and whoever. It's not a problem, and the judges. I think everybody's kind of waiting on Assumption right now to see what they're going to do.
But, and I think also the people in the parish would kind of look at, this would be a good plan, better plan, or best case scenario. Where do we want to be? Where do the people of Ascension Parish want to be? Do we want to really, go from good, better, or best, and put those options out there and let people decide how we're going to handle this issue and how far we're going to go to providing the services for the juveniles. And so, regardless of what would happen, we can still, there's a number of options down the road that we need to take a look at that services are not getting provided at this point in time, or the future of problems that we see down the road. I know Judge and Sheriff and DA has all mentioned a number of things that are just falling through the cracks. So, I think the people do want to have something first class over here, and we just need some options. So.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate everyone coming tonight and making themselves available to us for this length of time in this bad weather. Thank you. I feel abundantly better educated. Thank you. Moving right along, item number 6 on the agenda, the ACUD number 1 audit report. Mr. Tommy Lejeune with Falk & Winkler. Tommy, thank you
Ms.
for
Chairman.
being with us.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem. What I'm here to do tonight is report just on the activities that's going on with your water district on the west side of the parish. I realize we initiated some conversations in November and at one utility committee meeting in December. We were at the time preparing our audit for that water district. And so tonight I just want to share our observations with you and recommendations we have in addition to just action items that the parish administration has taken. The way I've got this laid out for you, you have one report or a letter that's addressed to President Martinez. It's about 13 pages. Rather than going through that line item by line item tonight, I attempted to put it into an executive summary rendering. And so what I want to do with you is walk through sort of the major items and refer and sort of flip back and forth between each document. So if you lay them out side by side, we can hit on a point and I can get to some more detailed discussion in the letter. Basically, if you start with the summary page, I've highlighted 3 observations. We're really 3 primary causes of financial stress that the district is currently experiencing or has experienced. One dealing with construction in terms of a major project that they undertook over the last couple of years, debt service associated with that construction, and then just operational, just how they're structured from a profitability standpoint and basically what is problematic for them from a financial perspective. But if you start and look at construction and kind of starting from the beginning and move to page 7 of the larger document, really the thing that's caused some immediate problems with the construction that's impacted debt service and operational issues is that from the start, the project did not have just the amount of funding it needed for what the committed spending was going to be. And basically, I've outlined for you the projection that the district was using when they were managing the project compared to what actually occurred. The district was expecting about $6.3 million in funding to fund, as you can see at the bottom line, total cost of $6,294,000. If you stay at the bottom, you can see that it basically is about a $10,000 surplus. So from a projection standpoint, they weren't expecting to be short. But if you come over and look at your total cost, typically when you see construction projects go upside down, it's usually because spending has gone too high. But basically you come across and you can see that they actually spent less than what their project was, what they anticipated spending was going to be for the project. But if you move up back to the top under the actual column, basically there was a disconnect between what the construction managers thought they had to use versus what the bond documents provided and how the bond was structured. There were three customary withholds, one dealing with discounts and underwriter fees. That's very traditional in a bond issue. Debt service reserve fund, that's an amount that is very traditional and you see a lot when debt's issued. And then the third thing, which was a little more unique in this situation, the way this was set up, based on when ACUD got its property tax approved and when the proceeds were anticipated to start getting collected, they did what I thought was a smart thing. They basically put together the first 4 years of interest payments that from the start of the issuance of the bond, they had 4 semi-annual payments of $100,000 or $108,000 to pay interest on the debt, and then they were going to start with both principal and interest at a later date. The money was set aside at the beginning because, one, revenue wasn't going to be in place to pay for it, and the ad valorem taxes weren't going to start being collected for some subsequent period of time. So the money was set aside, held out, put in a special account, basically utilized in accordance with the bond document. But as you can see, in terms of what was expected to be available and what was actually available were 2 significantly different things. And I'll talk about that a little bit more on page 2 of the larger document, but it's really that's the culprit in terms of why there's a construction shortfall. If you go back into the document and go to page 3 of the letter, there's a second issue that's arisen relative to that project. There are 3 contractors that have balances outstanding in terms of what invoices they've presented for payment. It totals roughly right at about $700,000. Those items are currently in litigation and in dispute between the district and its and those contractors. So as a result, that matter, and we'll talk a little bit about that more in a moment, but that matter is a contingency for you. You won't have an answer for that for some period of time, but at this point in time, that's what you're confronted with from a problem standpoint. If you come back over to the executive summary and look at the second bolded item that I have, we have debt service issues, which most of us, we talked about back in November when the district was confronted with a shortfall in terms of making its December debt service payments. If you go to page 12 in the document, basically there are 2 things I want to point out to you. There are 2 primary problems with debt service. One is the ability to pay the obligations as they come due, and 2, the large, or 3 of your bond issues require reserve funds, basically idle cash to stand, that's required in the bond agreements, and is there to protect the bondholders. But there are 2 issues, start at the bottom and we'll work our way up, that the debt service funds, there are 3 bonds, as I mentioned, roughly requiring about $410,000 in cash that should be in bank accounts that's going to sit idle. The district currently has about $22,000 in cash. So you can see there's about a $387,000 shortfall. Obviously, that's a problem there. And what it does, it puts them in technical default on their bond agreement, which makes the bonds callable. So that's something that has to get corrected. The second thing is up at the top part of this page. As you look at what funds on hand are available for debt service, what debt service is going to come due during the course of this calendar year 2013, and what shortfall you're facing. That the district went through a shortfall with this past December. If nothing changes and no corrective action is put in place, you're going to be confronted with a similar shortfall or a larger shortfall as you get to December of 2013. So we basically have 11 months to do something about it. But overall, you can see that if you look at the payments coming due between now and June 1st, with the money on hand and the amount of ad valorem taxes that are expected to be collected, you can cover those payments. Where it rears its head and becomes a problem is when you get into the December 1st payment that's due, which is right at $268,000, and it's the same number that we talked about back in November. So basically, you had a debt service shortfall of $226,000. Coming back to the executive summary and looking at operational matters, and here I want to cue you into page 4 of this document, of the letter, and basically I want to go over some key financial statistics in terms of where the district currently stands. Basically has about 700 customers, producing about $500,000 in total revenue in terms of user fees. Cost of water, to buy water based on the volume presently consumed, is about $175,000, which is about 35% of total revenue, leaving you with about a 65% gross margin, which really isn't bad from a rate setting standpoint. Coming down to item number 3, total operating costs for 2012 was right at $275,000. So once you take your $500,000 in user fees, back out the cost of water, back out your operating costs, you're sitting there with they're sitting there with about $50,000 in operating income. One of the problematic things that occurred in this assessment year, historically the district has received somewhere between $240 and $290 in terms of total property taxes. It fluctuates for a number of reasons. But last year they received about $241,000 in property taxes, which was used to help fund debt service. For the 2012 assessment that they're collecting right now, it's fallen to about $184,000. So obviously that's a problem, the loss of $57,000 in revenue. But once you add your debt service with the operating income that's produced, you have basically $236,000 available to fund $409,000 of total debt service. So as you can see with item 6, you basically left with a $175,000 overall deficit, which is something you need to do or handle. Working back over to the executive summary, in terms of recommendations, those have been outlined for you on page 5. And as you go through and you look at all 3 of those matters, number 1, dealing with the operational considerations, because the district needs to produce enough funds to meet its obligations. So as a result, what we concentrated on here was what are some things that you can do to get that $175,000 deficit eliminated. You know, the first is revenue enhancements. That would be one of 2 things: user rates or volume or number of customers. You know, the more you can either increase your volume of sales or you're increasing your rates. As we outlined here, basically the collection of those 2 is probably going to be the solution: raising your rates at some level and expanding your customer base. The second area in terms of revenue enhancements is it does collect the property tax. As I recall, when they issued that property tax and chose 10 mills, they were targeting a number right at $250,000. So an option is to go back to the voters and increase the millage. But obviously you got to get voter approval, and that's not an action that you have the authority to make, but it may be something long-term you look at. Item number 3, to the extent that you can achieve and eliminate that $175,000 deficit with just revenue enhancements, you got to look at cost in terms of what is the appropriate cost level based on the activity that we have. And then the final thing I'll hit on is right now you have the large debt issue that's outstanding has a balance of about $4.1 million as of the last payment date in December, and it's going to mature with varying rates between 4.1 and 5.5%, and it doesn't mature for another 20 years. So there may be an opportunity that might represent a refinance candidate that could help offset some of the debt service, that we can reduce debt service potentially, but something that you want to explore. And I think the other thing is something that the parish has used. You know, the way this debt document or the agreement was structured, it had a very traditional reserve mechanism. You know, the reserves in place to protect the bondholders in the event that payments can't be made on debt. They can grab the debt service reserve. What the parish has done on some of its debt issues is, rather than placing idle cash in an account, it's bought an insurance policy that would stand in the place of a cash account. It has to be set in the bond document, and the bondholders have to agree to it. The debt agreement that you have right now does not provide for that kind of provision. But if you refi it, this would be an opportunity to put that kind of provision in it so that you could free up a significant amount of cash that just doesn't have to sit in a bank account for 20 years. But I think those 2 things would be appealing in terms of looking at this. I did go back and look at the bond document, and you do have a call provision in it that you can't call this debt for 5 more years. That December of 2017 will be the earliest you can call it, but there are other mechanisms that you can initiate you can advance, refund it, and basically still do an effective refinance. So I think what I would do is look at this with your bond counsel and just see what the opportunities are. We've also listed out some parish actions, but I want to get into some of that on the next page of the executive summary in terms of steps that have been taken and things that have been planned. In terms of just the debt service issue that you've been confronted with, there's been discussion, and I realize the parish is looking at the purchase of a $550,000 bond issue for the district. If you look at page 9, which is attachment 2 to this document, and this is what I understand the uses would be of that money, that if you come down and look at the column to your right under the parish alternative 2, total proceeds of $550,000. Bond issuance costs would come down from what was initially expected. Basically, would take care of the debt service requirement. That money would be placed in that idle cash account that's required to meet your debt service requirements or the district's debt service requirements, and basically taking it out of default. and applying and complying with what the agreement calls for. The second item is to retire 2 small debt issues that the district has. One to the parish. There's an old loan that was provided for, I think, in 2001, 2002, and this would basically essentially retire that debt. So you put some money there and retire an old bond agreement. It would just come right back to you. And then the last one is this community resources. It's a small debt issue with about $24,000 outstanding, and you'd retire that. So basically, at those 4 items, right at about $450,000 of usage. And so what's contemplated with that excess $95,000 is one of several things. One is to hold it in escrow so that as you implement action, at least you are assured that you have money available to help you meet the December 1st, 2013 debt service obligations. So that money would just sit in an account that the parish would manage. And if you get to next year, when we get to December and we have a shortfall, you have something there available. The second item is that if you are able to implement action, a second alternative would be that you pay down some of this $550 early. That if you implement action that allows you to accumulate enough cash to meet the debt service under normal terms, you would have idle money here that would be left to your discretion in terms of you wanted to bring it back to the parish and retire this bond issue early, or a portion of it early, or whatever you deem. It would be left to your discretion. Okay, so but that would get us in terms of putting you in a position, one, to comply with the district's debt agreements and take that problem off the table, and secondly, it would provide some cash to give you some peace of mind that you're in a position to pay debt service as it comes due this coming year. On the next set of items from an operations standpoint, if you go to page 13, I want to walk through with you basically the cash flow simulations that we've been looking at, and basically the budget that the parish and the action plan, what the parish administration's action plan would look like. So I've put 2 things on this page for you. You know, one is where it stands currently, and I'll walk through these numbers with you a little bit earlier. You can see that $175,000 deficit in that first set of numbers. That's where they currently stand, and if you did nothing, that's what you'd repeat. If you come over and look at the administrative proposal, basically several things. As you look at where the numbers or where the dollars are being spent, of that $450,000 of total cost, really you're talking about water and people. You're buying water, which is set by contract, so that may not be able to move very much. As I mentioned earlier, it's only 35% of your revenues, so you're working off pretty good margins. So that's not been disrupted at this point in time. Basically looking at personnel, that 4 individuals working in that organization, you simply don't have the luxury of employing 4 individuals to run it, for the size that it's at. So as a result, personnel has been reduced pretty substantially. You do have a practice of charging 4%, that to the extent your finance office is used. All other funds pay a 4% fee, so that's been placed in here, so that's an add back. And then we went down and just looked at the other categories and basically clipping cost where we thought it was achievable. And I'll point out a few. Insurance, the district has a property and general liability insurance package that it just buys commercially, and it's about $13,000 a year. And our thought would be to put it into the parish's self-insurance program, and you ought to be able to save some money. Second area is in the area of professional. That's in there as attorneys and audit fees and some other professional costs. And I think to the extent that you bring it in and consolidate activities with the parish, that you maintain it in your office, it's going to be cheaper. I know what your legal costs are going to be. I know from my perspective, I'm auditing this entity. If I'm doing it as a standalone, and I've got to do it on its own basis, it's more costly when I got to issue that report separately and do an audit on a standalone basis than consolidating it with the parish. It's just going to represent a cheaper alternative. And so, those are some things that I think are very achievable. But if you come down and you look at all those actions, you basically get from $450,000 down to $375,000. So it's about $75,000. You're hitting up on 20% of cost reductions, which is pretty big for this size operation. Coming down and looking at debt service, Basically, if you eliminate those two smaller debt items that I mentioned earlier, you go from 409 to 396. So it's eliminating about $13,000 in annual debt service costs. So it's small, but it helps. And then what we said here as a minimum in terms of the new debt, when the parish issues that $550,000 bond, is to set a minimum amount to be paid back. Right now set at $25,000, and as you initiate better actions, that number can fluctuate, but trying to set a minimum expectation of payback. And then coming down and looking at operating revenues, I mentioned the $500,000 earlier, as well as the 184. You're still at about $111,000 deficit, but one of the actions that has been implemented, the district at its December meeting implemented a 20% across-the-board rate increase, which should produce about $100,000. So basically, that gets you there, and you know, the closing number is just bringing in additional customers of about $12,000. You know, so I think all that seems to be really achievable. The other thing that's in process, coming back to the executive summary under operations. Parish Finance Office would take over financial operations. That would be the disbursement of funds and the management of cash, in addition to the billing of customers and the collection of cash. So it would just be like any other utility that you operate. And it would fall under your system, you know, in terms of the disbursement of funds. It would go through the purchasing department, and it would go through your accounts payable department. So it would be no different than what you're doing with anyone else. And then the last item on that action steps is construction matters. I mean, this is the one that, as you look at this, and you got to take this as a very fluid situation, that you're taking these things in steps. Debt service is one that you can cure, that you need to cure pretty immediately. Operations is the next priority, that you got to get to a position where you're generating enough funds that it can support itself. And then the third is dealing with these construction matters. As I mentioned, that there's items in dispute. Could be large, most likely will be smaller, but at this point it's subject to litigation and has to go through that process. As I appreciate it, I think what you want to do from your perspective is that your legal counsel's involved in it and that you get the representation you need relative to those issues, and that there'll be some funding decisions to make depending on where settlements fall out. But that's the one item that's in process. What I can say is that certainly there's a lot that's been done over the last 30 days. You got 2 or 3 issues that's on par to be moved forward. You know, a lot of the action items are really going to put it in a better financial situation as you look at that proposed budget. I look at them as achievable, and some of these are going into place now and or have been put in place. So, I mean, I think that's going to be the thing to watch that's the most problematic in my mind is, I mean, to the extent that we aren't able to execute on some of these things, that means other items need to occur or other actions need to be implemented. But obviously, at the end of the day, you got to make this viable, that the bottom line is reasonable, and that the debt that you're going to extend, this $550,000, will be paid back.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm certain that there will be questions from this body, so I would ask you if you would to remain. Gentlemen, Councilman Lambert.
Yeah, Tom. Looking at the bond issue that we're looking at, the new one, the $550,000. I know we put it in place and we come next year and we go into this. Isn't that taken from the sinking fund that you're not supposed to take from?
Well, the reserve fund that you would put in place would not be touched.
Okay.
I mean, that 388 that I mentioned, that would remain, that would be an untouchable.
That would be untouchable.
That would
okay.
be untouchable. And
Okay.
it shouldn't have been touched to begin
So
with.
you have a little money here
Right.
to play
Basically,
with.
I'm putting
Okay.
100 there. I look at it like if you got a $226,000 debt service shortfall, if we've implemented a $100,000 rate increase and $75,000 in cost reductions, and we set aside $100,000, we ought to have
We should be okay.
enough cushion to make that work. But I think the other thing that's important is that as the administration takes over management of the operations, that it's just going to be an ongoing analysis, what's working, what's not, and just, to the extent some of these items we aren't able to, the parish isn't able to implement, then the other action items need to be developed and implemented.
And
So
we
that
have-
you're not going extending past that 100,000 that's put aside.
And I'm sure we have enough funding here, dealing with water, you're dealing with big pumps, if you have some major repair jobs
Yeah.
that come about.
Yeah, I kept it pretty much in line with where they've been spending.
Consistent with, okay.
Right, right. And it's a new system, too, so
That'll help.
my expectation is that you would get,
A few
Yeah.
years before you
Yeah.
get major repairs.
right, right.
Councilman Lower.
Thank you, Tom.
Tommy, I'm not asking you to throw anybody under the bus on camera or anything like that, but I am very interested in trying to make sure we don't repeat this in the future. In your opinion, and first of all, thank you very much for this very thorough investigation that was needed, but in your opinion, do you think the issue with spending the debt sinking fund and underestimating the debt for construction, all that, it was more a function of bad advice from bond counsel or lack of understanding of the people on the ACD board? Or how did we get there?
I think the board relied on its professionals, and that's where I think they got led astray.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one minute, Chairman.
Councilman Lambert.
Looking at the area for potential growth and customer base, growing the customer base, it looks pretty good to pick up a few additional customers, or how we looking there?
Mr. President.
Well, we gave them a grant last year for $281,000, and then there's an additional grant that Martha came the other night and asked that we apply for. And hopefully, next week, I'm trying to set up, in fact, I called today, but I couldn't get him, set up a meeting with the plant manager at CF Industries, Lou Fry, and hopefully we can take the money from the grant money, run the line, and then pick them up as a customer. If we pick them up as a customer, it's going to be a major win for us and the district, and I think that'll put us in black from here on out, and also give us the ability to extend those lines a little further and pick up additional customers. Yes, sir.
Great, that's great news.
And I think what's important, too, just to sort of work off of that, is the proposal that you have on that back schedule doesn't really include any major commercial customers.
Great.
So.
Tommy, thank you so much for the very thorough analysis of this issue and for working with the administration to bring this to us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, moving along to item number 7. Mr. Ben Laurie.
Good evening. This item is for an amendment to the existing contract with Fenstermaker. We went out for RFQ early last year for firms to help us with the STP funding application. The projects that we submitted all were selected and approved by DOTD. At this point, we're looking to move forward with the design phase of the ones that are in fiscal year 12-13. And the projects that Fenstermaker did the stage zeros for are the ones that fall into that category. So this is asking for amendment to the existing contract.
I'll second.
Move that to the full council.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Councilman Kluwat, a second by Councilman Shakespeare. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Agenda item 8, Ms. Gwen LeBlanc.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Louisiana Audit Compliance Questionnaire is a required part of our financial audit for all Louisiana governments, and the legal matters contained within that questionnaire parallel those matters contained in the laws affecting parish governments and must be adopted by the parish council by resolution. What we are doing is we're presenting and answering these questions and presenting them to our auditors. That states that we are disclosing all pertinent information to the auditors. It's a fair presentation of our financial statements in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. And it also states that we are complying with the public bid law, code of ethics law, the Local Government Budget Act, accounting, auditing, and financial reporting laws, asset management laws, fiscal agency and cash management laws, debt restriction laws, revenue and expenditure restriction laws, road system administration law, laws governing drainage districts, fire districts, and other special districts, and also our home rule charter mandates. So we ask that you consider this resolution and recommend it to the parish council for adoption. And I'll read it. It's a short resolution. Be it resolved that the council of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, hereby adopts a Louisiana compliance questionnaire for the 2012 audit of the government of the Parish of Ascension. Be it further resolved that the Louisiana compliance questionnaire be presented to auditors Falk and Winkler, said audit firm approved by the Ascension Parish Council and the State of Louisiana Legislative Auditor.
I have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert and a second by Councilman Randy Cluott. Any discussion? Hearing any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Moving on to item number 9, monthly contracts. Kimlin?
The contracts report for the month of December 2012, there are 3 contracts. It's included in your packet. You can look over them and if anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Hearing no questions, we'll move along to item number 10. Who will be giving this report? I have Ken's name.
Sherry Kitchen.
Ms. Kitchen, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam
Thank you.
Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, Parish President Martinez. I think in your packet you have the proposal from People Keys, which the Parish President asked us to find a training program where we could train our employees, our young supervisors, and give them the training and skills that they need to be effective leaders and share the vision of the Parish of Ascension. And I think you see those goals and the objectives that are listed there, the core values. And in the packet, it gives you how we hope to address that. We are in the process of developing a new assessment model, our new evaluation for employees. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Does People Keys have any experience in this area in municipal governments, parish
Yes,
government?
ma'am, they do. They currently have done the training for United Airlines, Federated Investors, and the United States Air Force Academy. Those are just 3 of their clients.
Councilman Lohr?
Curious around integration with the HR system. And, are you aware of if it integrates so that you're not, looks like a very good system, but in terms of like if it's for new hires, people who are promoted, things of that nature. So I want to make sure we're integrating that so that's feeding and you're not having to manually key in 2 different systems and all that stuff.
Right. We provided them with our policy manual so that they developed the training based on the things that we saw that we needed from past experiences. It's actually tailor-made to what we want with our employees. They're going to use our employees for the role playing, and hopefully the goal is to have this training be part of the new hire training so that as new hires come in, they will use this portal as part of the new hire orientation.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is just from a systems talking to each other standpoint, like the HR system, because that's actually called our IT director, just make sure that that was covered, because otherwise you're not going to get as much value in it as you would if you have to key, say every time somebody changes a position, what have you, or a new hire's hired to key them into this system. I mean, you can integrate those systems and make them talk to each other. I just want to make sure that's included in the scope of services.
Well, currently, Councilman, we have no HR software in place, so we currently are using what we've used in the past. So we don't actually have a software that this has to be integrated into.
So using AS400, that the old system? Okay, but you could still do that.
Right, it would
Yeah.
still integrate with that. We
Okay.
would still use our new hire practices that we use now.
Can I just ask that you guys run this through before you execute on it, run it through IT just to make sure, because he might be able to take a
Absolutely.
look at it. Yeah, it's just a pet peeve, just from daily job of being in IT, that sometimes the business units don't necessarily bring IT to the table. Sometimes they miss out on things that they, or it ends up being not as good as it could be if they'd been included. So, thank you.
Certainly.
I have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert,
A second.
second by Councilman Kent Shake Snyder. Any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 11, the sales and use tax report. Ms. Gwen LeBlanc.
You have before you your monthly sales tax report. This is for November collections. It's the second to last collection month of 2012. So the next report will be the final report for 2012. The three taxing districts. On the first page, you can see the November collections year-to-date compared to 2011 are both up, both positive. And the reason the month-to-dates are, a little higher than normal is because some construction activity in the chemical corridor. And that compared to the budget, and this is the budget that was amended in November for 2012. And you can see that we're over the budget in each of the three taxing districts. And on the second page, the board chart, the red represents 2012 compared to the blue chart 2011, and this is for year-to-date, January through November, and it represents only the 1 cent sales tax, just to give you an idea of where sales taxes are moving. And you can see that in every category, they're above the 2011 collections. And then the second to last page is the pie chart that shows you, just to give you an idea of the sectors that you're collecting your sales taxes in. And you can see the petrochemical industry and their suppliers at 49%, and the consumer retail is at 31%, motor vehicles at 12%, and the business-to-business category at 8%. And the last chart is the historical depiction of the sales tax collections from 2003, and the little red represents the month of December, or not December, the last month of sales tax collections for the year in each of those years. And you can see 2012 is above that level at this point, without considering the last collection.
Excellent. Any questions, gentlemen? All right, we will move along to agenda item number 12, revenue and expenditure report. Ms. Amanda Barat.
Good evening. Before you are the financial reports for the month of November 2012. On page 1, total revenues are at 87.04% at 92% of the year. The funds highlighted in green are funds that are under the budget by 5% or more, and we have 10 operating funds and 7 capital funds that fall in that category. And on page 4 of the report, there's an explanation for those funds. On page 2, total expenditures are at 81.65% at 92% of the year. The funds highlighted in green are funds that are over the budget by 5% or more. There are 4 operating funds and 5 capital funds that fall in that category, and on page 5 of the report, there's an explanation of those funds. Page 3 are charts that compare both the year-to-date revenue and expenditures for operating, which is the yellow bar, and capital, which is the blue bar, to the budget, which is the green bar. On the last page of the report is a list of all checks issued in the month of November that were over $100,000. The total of those checks are $1,623,487.73. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions, gentlemen? All right, moving right along. Agenda item number 13. Ms. Jones, yours.
Request for proposals, Lamar Dixon Expo Center improvements. On November 7, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 14 proposals for the Lamar Dixon Expo Center improvements. After review, the Engineering Selection Committee recommends accepting the proposals submitted by Grace and Abear Architects and to authorize the parish president to begin contract negotiations for this service.
So move, Madam Chairman.
Have a motion?
Second.
A motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, a second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any questions or discussion, gentlemen?
How much is this?
4.5 million.
All right, and exactly what are they going to do?
They're
I
gonna
know.
go in, acclimatize it, and also work on the ceilings and sound system. We also got a $1 million, $1.5 million, I think, in solar panels now that we're gonna incorporate in this. That actually was is part of a mitigation project with NRG, and that'll save us a lot of money on operations there, and they can also maintain those solar systems. So,
Okay, have we been able to bring down I know the big cost was electrical costs in the past and everything, because we had a contract with that. Has that been?
don't hold me exact on this, but when we first kind of took over, I think it was like $500,000 a year. Now it's down to about $340,000. So just by taking some precautions and turning off lights and doing those type things, when it's not your money, it's easy to spend. So we've taken some steps and actually reduced that. And of course now with the amount of activity going on in the industrial corridor, our RV lots are full, so I'm sure the electrical cost is going to go up, but also our income is going to go up. So
Okay.
it's
And
gonna-
that NRG grant, that was, I think that's one John had talked about, that.
Yes, it was, they had to do some mitigation on another project, and that they had to mitigate because of some problems they had on another project. And one of the projects, we had been talking to them, and John's helped us with it, was actually doing some solar paneling out at Lamar Dixon. And it's going to end up being about $1.5 million total. So that's like a grant to us, a gift to us, and it's going to, I think, reduce a lot of cost, and hopefully we'll have some extra power we can put in some other buildings. So anyway.
Okay.
good
Councilman
deal.
Kluwat?
Appreciate it. I don't think anybody realized the scope of what was going on there, so we appreciate that. And I know a lot of people worked on it.
4.5 million is a grant. It came from Gustav, so it's a CBDG grant. So you have to take, on this one, you'd have to take the number one, the recommendation of the committee. So
Councilman Kluwat?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to, Parish President John McMillan, thank y'all very much. And, we're going to get that place moving in the right direction. Ken had mentioned the electrical, with energy, and there is an agreement in place that had been in place since it was there about the base payments on the electrical, I believe, but I hadn't seen it. I've asked for it.
that's always been a rumor. We met with Energy,
Right.
and that's not true. I mean,
Okay,
we
that's
heard
what I
that.
wanna clear up.
We heard that also, but that's not the case. If you
Yeah.
can talk to David Herring. Basically, we own everything inside the facility. We have like, I think, how many meters, Gwen? How many? 4 or 5 meters that get built out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everyone's on.
Just moving, and I know we've already done some, and quite frankly, we've saved $150,000 or so a year of what they used to use there. But, continue to move on. I know at the commissary, there's a demand meter. There was a demand meter
Right.
there. If we continue on with each independent building with demand meters, and then that'll give us a real good, telling of where our
Right.
where our usage is at. and what type of rental we need to look at when we're renting those places.
We're also looking at putting in some portable floors in there where we could do basketball and different things in the arena,
Yeah.
and soccer and stuff like that for our recreation program.
Mhm.
So, but they'll be movable where you can still have the other events.
Excellent, thank you. I have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert and a second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert to approve the request for proposal from item number 13. We've had the discussion. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 14 on the agenda will be the bid items. Ms. Jones-Shivers.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 2 bids for bridge material. After review, the Purchasing Department and DPW recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from MCM Lumber Company.
So moved, Madam Chairman. Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert and a second by Councilman Kent Shakespeare. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, that motion passes.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 3 bids for limestone grade 89. After review, the Department of Public Works and Purchasing Department recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from Bear Industries.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, a second by Councilman Dan Satterley. Any discussion or questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 4 bids for limestone grade 610. After review, the Purchasing Department and DPW recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from Vulcan Materials.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Daniel Satterley and a second by Councilman Chris Lohr. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 3 bids for river silt. After review, the Purchasing Department and DPW recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from South Louisiana Field Material.
So moved, Madam Chairman. Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, a second by Councilman Kent Shakespeare. Any discussion? Councilman Kluwat.
Yeah, Ms. Jones, just looking at that, I noticed that there's a pretty decent difference in those prices. With the paperwork I got, you know,
Yes, sir.
so that's a heck of a difference.
South Louisiana Field Material is our current bidder.
Yeah.
That's who has the bid. They respond when we call.
That's good. So, I mean, you feel like there's no discrepancy, that they're not sure what they're bidding on, right?
We're doing it now. They gotta go by the book.
All right.
Thank you for your questions. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 1 bid for shavings. After review, the Purchasing Department and Lamar Dixon Expo Center recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from S&S Farm.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
I have a motion by Councilman Dan Satterley, a second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any discussion or questions, gentlemen? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 4 bids for washed gravel. After review, the Purchasing Department and DPW recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from South Louisiana Field Material.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Chris Lohr, a second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any questions? No objections, the motion passes.
On December 27, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 2 bids for an automated fleet fuel system and supplier. After review, the Purchasing Department and Fleet Department recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from Levine Oil Company and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this project.
Motion.
That's second.
I have a motion by Councilman Chris Lohr, a second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any questions or discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
On December 20th, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 2 bids for the wind retrofit of critical facilities. After review, the Purchasing Department, Parish Grants Office, and GSE and Associates recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from J. Reed Constructors and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this project.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Kent Shakesnider. Any discussion or questions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
On January 3rd, 2013, the Purchasing Department received 11 bids for the construction of Fire District Number 3, Station 33. After review, the Purchasing Department, Fire District Number 3, and Domain Design recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from Deaver Design Bill and to not accept their alternate number 1 bid in the amount of $12,000, and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this project.
Motion.
That's second.
I have a motion by Councilman Lohr, second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any discussion or questions? Yes, Councilman Lohr.
Curious if we could hear from Domain Design on why the parish purchasing, what the recommendation was as far as not accepting the addendum number, or alternate number 1 in the amount of $12,000, since that's kind of small in the grand scheme of things.
When we went to bid, the budget was somewhere around, was it 1.2, 1.3, right at that number. And since we were slightly over and we had 11 bids and we felt that they were very good bids, that these numbers were worth grabbing hold of, the alternate was just to put solid surfacing countertops, and we felt it wasn't worth the $12,000. It was a frivolous number based upon what we were spending already.
Thanks. Wasn't sure what that was
Yeah.
for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations in this process.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Shakesnider.
And what exactly are we getting in this fire station? What size fire station? What?
It's a single unit station, approximately 7,000 square feet. It's going to be located on the Plessis, just off of Airline, past the railroad tracks.
And accommodate how many, just one bay or?
It'll be 2 bays.
Okay.
But for the near to moderate future, we're planning on having 1 unit there. But as housing, demographics, things like that continue to change, there's a possibility down the road it could require more than 1 unit. But for right now, we're planning on staffing 1 truck there.
So this would be basically what you would look to be adding on in other fire stations as you would continue?
This looks to be hopefully what we've created here is a future model. For most of our stations in the future would be no more than 2 units. And so we've kind of got a design now where we think most likely any piece of property where we would need to locate 1, we can fit this with maybe minor variations and should serve us for all of our future station needs.
Yeah, that would be great, if we can just.
Yeah, we'll have the template and the architectural work and all that stuff pretty much done, other than maybe some minor changes depending on site location or something. But yeah, this should carry us on down the road well into the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
y'all.
it.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Madam Chair.
Councilman Satterley?
Yeah, and Fire Chief, just to be sure, this is, was in the overall plan when the millage came last April for the Fire District 3?
Yes, sir, it was.
This is part, I just
5
want-
years ago, we were identified as, we needed to increase our number of stations by approximately 4 at that time.
right.
This is one of those 4 that we're getting started moving forward with that progress.
Just wanted to be sure the people at home in District 4 understand that.
Yes, sir,
Thank
that's
you.
absolutely true.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, gentlemen. Do we have any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
On December 18, 2012, the Purchasing Department received 5 bids for oil and grease. After review, the Purchasing Department and Fleet Department recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid from Lord Oil Company.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert and a second by Councilman Dan Satterley. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Motion adjourned, Madam Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn by Councilman Todd Lambert and a second by Councilman Lohr. I thank you all for your attention tonight and look forward to safekeeping for all of our residents in our community during this rain event. Thank you.